everyone. This is Sabreen, and you are listening or watching the Lemon Narrative with Sabreen podcast. I am Sabreen. I'm a writer and your host. I'm also a storyteller, and in this podcast, I meet amazing people to listen to their stories and share it with you guys. I usually ask them the question that you already know by now. If I'm writing a feature film about you, what would you tell me? Today, I have with me an amazing poet, one of the first people who welcomed me in the Instagram side of writing, I guess. And I love her profile. I love her writing. And I'm so excited to have here today. Leah, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited for this conversation. So, do you want to introduce yourself to the audience? Who are you?
My name is Leah. I'm an Australian poet writer. By day, I work in marketing. By afternoon, I'm a gymnastics coach. And by evening, I'm an avid overthinker and poet.
I love the overthinker part. Yeah. I definitely can relate to two things there. The 9 to 5 in the morning, and then the writing and the overthinking about everything happening, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. I think you're my first guest from Australia, and I'm excited. Yeah, I think you are.
Yes.
I'm excited for this. Okay, let's jump right into this. So, Leah, if I'm writing a feature film about you, what would you tell me? But we were gonna start by that first scene. This is your film. This is your life. What do you want the first opening scene, a vivid moment in your life or scene in your life you wanted to be the first thing your audience will watch in your movie?
I think I envision look, I'm no hiker myself, but I do envision some sort of mountainous walking through, because that's what specifically the last 4 or 5 years have felt like like a one long hike that has been persistent and has tested my endurance. And so I think my first scene, I would find myself there. That's very reflective of the last 4 to 5 years. It's just felt like one big long hike.
Okay. So you're imagining yourself, would you be alone in this hike?
You're
walking?
I would envision myself, to be alone. I would envision, some snow, some forest, like lots of different landscapes. But I think I'd be alone with my big backpack, just me and nature, and just hiking.
Hiking. Okay. So when you say this, I don't know why I imagined a forest too. I have no idea why I had this in my mind, like those tall trees, and there's a path that's not walked a lot, but it's still walked. You know what I mean? Like it looks civilized enough for you to take the walk, but also not many steps had been taken in that path, and you're going there. And I also I don't know why, but I imagined starting it with green forest, and then it goes into fall, and then winter, like change of seasons. You mean? You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I guess those change of season could be what you're going through, like the green. I know mostly green are the good times. Rain is a little bit not so good, and then you get the winter cold. I guess I love fall. Depends on how people look at fall. Fall could be a season of success as well, in my opinion. The colors are beautiful. The trees know that they have to to say goodbye to the leaves because new ones are coming, right? Harsh winter are not suitable for them. Okay, let's go season by season. What is your I don't know, pick the season you want to go into and tell me what would that look like in your life. If we started with that opening scene and with the change of seasons, what do you think each season represent? I'm imagining an era in your life or something was happening in your life, right? And it doesn't have to be like really but something you feel like it's important to be there in your film, right?
Yeah, I think I would start probably in winter.
Okay.
I think I've found myself there more times in the last couple years. And so I have felt a deep soul winter. And so the catalyst for my winter was in 2020. My mum passed away from,
So
she
sorry.
had some brain aneurysms, and she fought for 7 days on life support, and then we just never got past that stage where they could ever even look at taking her off. And so we had to make that really tough decision. And so I think my winter has been long because grief is long and it's enduring, and it persists, and yes, it changes. And I have found so much joy in now that I'm growing around my grief. But definitely if I take myself right back to that very poignant moment of, this is my season has now changed. I had a great, altogether I've had a really amazing life. But when, you get that unexpected phone call and you're like, this changes this changes the course of my life. This here is a winter. And so I have felt that persistent winter probably for the last 3 years, to be honest. Like, I've had these small soul seasons that have changed. I've had the fall where I'm letting go of some past things, and I've had the spring where I'm finding joy in small moments. But it has been an overarching winter, and so I think that's where I would start, because I would say that's where my story, not my story begins, because I've had a beautiful story beforehand, but my most deep soul work and grieving and growing has happened ever since that moment.
How would you describe grief back and now? Back in that time, first of all, I'm so sorry for your loss of
Thank
your
you.
mother. Cannot imagine how this feel, but I know grief through different experiences. So I really need, I don't know, maybe because you're a poet, I expect that, but no pressure.
Yeah.
How would you describe grief when you experience it, let's say the first days in your winter, and now as you look at it, because you said you grow your grief, and that's what I see is that grief never actually leaves you, right? It's still there somehow. It's not learning how to live with it. It just changes and becomes part of you, that I don't think you're necessarily willing to leave behind, because it can't be left behind, especially in your case. So what do you see as I don't know, the difference? How would you describe the two?
If I take myself back to those first moments, so I had those 7 days where I was just thinking, this would never be, she's not going to die, this won't be me, this won't be, you always think it's not going to be you until it is. And I held so tightly on to hope, and I had faith that, miracles happen. I know that. And so I held really tightly to that. And so I remember there was this distinct moment where I came to terms with, this is it. Is that, so we had 2 visiting sessions. We could go in the morning and then let her rest, and then we could come back in the afternoon. And in the morning she was all plugged in, and then in the afternoon I came back and they had taken everything out. And that was my first moment, was like, this is it. I'm coming face to face with what I never thought I would have to face. And so that grief was, I don't think I recognized it as grief at that time. It was anger, and it was numbness. It was also I felt this really deep responsibility for everybody else's grief. What can I do that will make your grief easier? And I put off my grief for a long time because I
Of course.
felt this deep responsibility for my family, for how can I make your grief easier? But I forgot to ask that to myself. And so initially it was this overarching just pain. It was in the small things, there would be mornings where I wake up and just for a second you forget and everything feels fine, and then you remember. And so I think in the very early days it was anger at why someone so beautiful and I wouldn't ever wish it upon someone, but you have these thoughts like, why not someone who's done something really bad, and I would never wish that. But that was one of my thoughts, is like, she lived her life in pursuit of making other people's better. And I just thought, I'm so angry at the fact that why her, And so I would say the most prominent emotion very early on was just this anger. And I definitely felt the sadness, and the little things remind you, but that's what I remember most prominently, was just this anger. And I'm not an angry person, so that, that was a lot to come to terms with. And so grief very early on is all consuming. It takes up all of your brain power. I used to wonder why by the end of the day, or not even by the end of the day, I was sleeping, and that's not me. But grief just takes up so much of your emotional bucket and your capacity that if you can even make it through one or two other tasks in the day, that's a success. And so grief very early on for me was it was all consuming. It was really all consuming. But if I look at my grief now, I have grown so much around my grief. I still feel my grief very deeply, and I think I have grown into a healthy relationship with my grief, listening to myself, listening to what I need, because it took me a long time to do that. But grief now, if I'm honest, I have more moments of joy in my grief. I can look, very early on, it was all of the things I'm now missing. It's all these moments I don't get to share with her. But now it's like all of the moments we did have, and there's a lot more joy and growth. And of course, there's still moments of sadness and that deep ache for something that you don't have. But now I've grown so much more around it that there's so much room for other emotions, joy, happiness, growth, all of these things I have so much more room for. And of course, I make space for when I really just need to have those deep heart cries, where it's just like this guttural ache, because of course it still does ache. But I have learned to let other things in, and it doesn't move me any further away from her. She's still very deeply ingrained within me. And I think I held tightly onto my grief early on, because if I let go of my grief, does that mean I'm not close anymore? Does that mean I'm putting distance between us? But it doesn't. I'm half her, that's as close as you can get, And so that's learning that is like, when I experience joy, I don't need to feel guilty for experiencing joy, because she would want me to, these things is now grief is so much more expansive. And yes, I still think about her daily, and yes, I still have those deep moments, but not my grief has grown, but I have grown around my grief, and I've let other things in and planted different seeds, to grow in this garden, as I imagine it.
Oh, I love everything you said. Because I've said it before, but I love that we agree on some of maybe because we're poets. I still call myself a poet,
Yes,
even
of
though I don't
course.
publish a lot. So I just want to touch on a couple of things you said. It's the responsibility you felt, right? And that responsibility pushed you into neglecting your feelings. Also, that neglect comes from avoidance to face the feelings, right? Because
Yes.
you know how these feelings are, how would I call them? You know, facing them is not easy, and you don't know what the outcomes, because the first time you feel such a thing, there's this fear
Mm.
of approaching and facing the grief and sadness, right? You don't know, are
Mm.
you gonna cry, are you gonna like scream at people? So I feel like most people who have some sense of responsibility, when they're faced with grief or whatever emotion that they're not accustomed to, the first thing they do is they run to accommodate for others,
Mm-hmm.
because it's easier. It's accommodation seems the selfless act of taking care of
Yes.
other people, but it's still, there's like 20%, maybe more, I'm not a therapist, of avoidance in there, right? Because
Yeah.
I've experienced it in myself, right? I have told myself I can't cry today, because if I cried, my family would cry, and I need
Mm-hmm.
them to move on.
Mm.
And instead, I could have thought maybe if I cried with them, all of us could heal together,
Mm.
right? So postponing that feeling will make you hold into it even more in your subconscious, because basically your subconscious usually tries to protect you,
Mm.
right? And at some point you need to experience that grief, whatever the outcomes, whatever the feelings that you're going to face at that time, because grief has, how would I say it has steps, right? It starts with anger, and then the sadness,
Mm.
then again you go again to the realization of what's happening, right? Because if you are angry, there's some sort of denial in there,
Mm.
and then accepting the truth, right? And I love what you said. I love the transition you made
Mm.
about experiencing the joy in it, right? That is something I told a friend of mine when she lost her mother. I said, I don't think your mother now cares about the materials in your life as much as she is thankful for everything that happened while she was with you, right?
Mm.
And I would love, that was my advice, for her to visit all the times they had together and be thankful,
Yeah.
not be happy or enjoy it, or like just have this kind of gratitude
Mm.
to those moments every now and then, as a sort of helping yourself. And it's really, and I think what stop us from that is what you said. If I felt joy, am i am I portraying that person because they left,
Yeah.
because there's joy in there too, because there is joy that you had all these moments with them. There's this guilt of survivor, right? So you feel like, okay, if I laugh today, the moment you laugh,
Yeah.
after you're done laughing, you remember, and you're like, oh, I shouldn't laugh. It's like you are guilty of something. You're guilty of feeling happiness and joy.
Mm.
So, and this is one of the steps, by the way, which you need to realize there's nothing wrong with that. You're not guilty with
Mm.
anything for you to experience the full joy. And why I love you mentioned all of that is for people who are listeners who are going through this or went through this, to know there's steps to grief. It doesn't go from A to B. No, it's from A to Z. You go through all the
Yeah.
letters, right? You go through all the letters. When was the first time you accepted all the feelings? What do you have a moment that's very vivid that you realize, oh, this is it, I accept those feelings? And is there someone or something that helped you? Or like, what would you tell someone to get into that? Of course, everyone has their own process of accepting it and processing grief, but what do you think an advice would be? Or not I don't like the word advice, but something you went through helped you that might help people as well.
I wouldn't say there was an exact moment that I felt that I had accepted everything that happened, but I would say that when I took up writing because I mean, I liked words and I liked writing before, but not on the level that I feel it now. And so I would say, because writing initially, my writing was anger, and it was letters of why, these sorts of things. But then also, as I look back on my writing, as I also get to see that change as well. And so I found something that was just for me. And I have found something that's just mine. No one can take my words away. No one can take my time that I spend writing away. No one can take my sacred spaces that I have chosen to make, those really safe spaces for myself. No one can take that away. And so I found that to be my biggest helper, was find something just for you, something that you not necessarily go into it thinking this is how I'm going to heal, because that what you've chosen may not work for you, and that's okay. But if you attach that this is what I'm going to do, then you feel obligated to continue with that. My going into it was, this is something that I'm doing now. It doesn't always have to be, but in the now, this is what I'm choosing to just take that next step, put that puzzle piece in, think about this, get that thought out, let go of some things. This is what I'm doing now, and I've chosen that just for me. And so I would say, find something that's just yours, something that, whether that is a walk or, there's endless things.
Yeah, could be running in the morning.
Exactly. It could be anything. And so find that something that is just for you, that no one can take away, and protect it with your life. I have protected writing is something that I have done on the days when I feel the inspiration flowing, and on the days where I'm like, there is not a single cog turning up here. Let's just get something out. And I have protected that so much, because that has, looking back on it, that has been how I have healed. But I didn't know that at the time. I was like, this is just something I'm doing that feels good. That feels like I'm getting somewhere. But now when I look back, this was my lifeline. This was how I healed. This is how I kept my head above the water, and I kept that really, really safe.
I love this. You know why? Because this is a relapse in my life and your life. When did you start the writing? This happened, you said, in 2020?
And I started that was in November 2020. I started writing probably not long after. I would say January or February. I started noting some things down. Consciously, probably, March, April. And then I had a collection of just pages and pages and pages of writing. And then I started my Instagram in September. So there was still those months where I wasn't sharing anything. This was still just for me. And I still, I had all of those months where I was like, this is still just for me, before I felt compelled to share.
And you just felt compelled to share on Instagram, or how did this started?
I think I initially started it, and I didn't tell anyone that it was me, because there's that whole fear of, what do people think? What are people going to think about my writing? Because this is my most sacred thing. This is what I have held the closest, and now I'm releasing it to the world, and that is scary. That is so scary, because, you have people on Instagram, and now I don't care about them, but they just say, they're out to criticize, they're out to cut you down. And because writing has been my lifeline and my most sacred thing, I really took that to heart.
Yeah.
But now I've reached a place where it's like, well, this is what I am learning. This is take it. I'm a firm believer in, my words will reach who they're meant to reach, when they're meant to reach them. And if you stumble across them and don't like it, that's fine.
Move on.
Because this was for me. This is for me, and I just, but I did just feel compelled to put it out to the world. I didn't share it on my personal socials at all. I didn't really want to put it out there, but then I just felt, no, I'm owning, this is my healing journey. These are my words. This is mine. And so I do feel compelled to share it. And I found in that sharing, because, my mum was a people person. She had connections everywhere, and she made everyone feel like they were her best friend. And the most common feedback that I feel so touched by is that people have found healing or have felt closer or have found some sort of something that's done something for them through my
Mhm.
words. And that has been so impactful. And so I am glad that I chose to break through the fear of people are going to know it's me. Well, of course they will, you know?
Mhm.
And so, and, and this is my offering to the world. This is
Mhm.
what I'm giving. And if if I can make someone feel less alone in what they're going through, then I have done my job.
Yeah, and you're a great writer, by the way.
Thank you.
Sometimes you write something and I'm like jealous. I'm like, wow, why didn't I
I
think about that? But I think that's
think
like,
it's with everybody. Yes.
yes, it's the healthy jealousy of a writer. We all say,
Yes.
I'm like, this is such an simple idea that made a phenomenal poem or like piece of writing. Why did I feel it? Why did I think about it? Why did she?
Yes.
But it makes you write more, so we love
Mm.
it, right? um I love this part because I think I started I don't remember, it was either September 2020, 2021.
Mhm.
I believe it's September
Mhm.
2021, so a year, I think a year after you, something like that.
Yeah.
um and for me it was that I had kidney failure that led to kidney
Wow.
transplant. And during the dialysis, I started writing when I was a kid, and I had a teacher who told me you're a writer, right? And I didn't want
Wow.
to believe her, right? I didn't want to believe her. And I when I got sick, I couldn't finish my honors, so I graduated with a major from with my bachelor, and then the doctors say don't pursue jobs because we're gonna have you do the transplant, and then COVID happened, and everything was postponed,
Yeah.
and then I remained in dialysis for almost years. So I couldn't work because it was too dangerous for me to work. I couldn't commit to any masters or anything because I even started a course and I couldn't finish it, right?
Wow.
So I didn't want to lose money on courses.
Of course.
I couldn't work, right? And I was just chilling at home with my family, and it was nice, but sometimes, I needed to do things. So I realized that I can imagine words. Why am I not writing them? And I
Mm.
actually had written poems when I was studying. Every night it was my procrastination.
Yes.
It was my procrastination method. I'm like, I don't know, when I'm stressed, I just write, right? So I found that I had like my phone like loads of notes that are
Mm.
actually poems or feelings, and I told myself, okay, I'm gonna start Instagram. But I felt every word you said about being fearful about sharing your writings, I'm still there. I don't share a
Mm.
lot. um I only share right now, I share the reels, right? Every now and then I would post a poem, or my goal was to post one per week, right? But I go back and I criticize myself, or
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I remember what I felt here. What if someone, because we write from a point of emotion.
Mm.
And usually, and I have to say this, as a writer, sometimes I don't understand the emotion when I'm writing because it just
Mm.
happened to me. And it requires me time to get back to what I wrote to understand this was a couple of them. It was like
Yes.
emotions like this. And I need to like either edit it or like think more or like express it in a different way, right? It doesn't happen all the time, but it does
Mm.
happen, the editing process. So, and I then you get attached as if it's a child. You don't want anyone to tell you your child looks ugly, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, there's the fear. So I still have that fear, and I also can relate to the fact that I did not want anyone to know this is me on Instagram, right? And it
Mm.
was also 2019. I stopped all social media for the sake of my sanity.
Yeah. Yes.
So it was going back, and not going back as myself with my friends. It was going back with identity that I'm establishing for myself. And I was scared my friends would be like, writing? You think you can write? I was scared that people would be like, this is not what it's supposed to be. Like one of my favorite poetesses, I don't know the word, But Ruby Kapoor.
Yes, I just saw her live in April. She was
Oh,
amazing.
did you? Oh, I wish. And she's from Toronto, and I lived here. So I believe Hamilton or Toronto. It's just Canadian.
Hmm.
So, and I listened to her, and how I started to get to know her is I had like this group support while I was doing dialysis, and the social worker would bring us. Is her book called Bees and Honey or Milk and Honey?
Milk and honey?
Yes. So she
Yeah.
would bring us like some of she'd bring us like a small piece of paper that had some of her words, right?
Wow.
And I remember like some of them were amazing, and it just went with what I was feeling, and I loved her so much. And then I was watching this YouTube video about writing, and this guy just bashed her. He's like, done. She's a bad writer, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, if they say that about her,
Mm.
what about me? you know and
Yes.
there's that fear. It's not easy to be out there. It's not easy to share your face, um but there is meaningful, and you find your people somehow when you go
Mm.
all in, right? And I feel like this type of I don't know if it's a career, but it's a choice, right? And I think this choice, it's one of those choices where you have to go all in or not,
Yeah.
because you can't fabricate a poem. Right? You
No.
can't take some out of the poem or the writing. It will be meaningless. So you have to be there, out there, right? And
And people, I think people can tell as
yeah.
well. And I try to once every 3 months I don't put a time limit on it when I'm feeling like I'm not producing things, because that pressure really sets in. The
Mm-hmm.
pressure to, I've got to post because the stupid algorithm, and like, all of these things that is not, I'm not posting to please some algorithm that's chopping and changing constantly and
Yeah.
will show my work to some people, and, all these things. And that sometimes overtakes the passion. And when I can feel that it's like these two things are rubbing against each other, when I can feel that, I
Mm-hmm.
think I need to take a step back, because I'm not all in right now, and I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. You can't pour from an empty cup, and
No.
so I'm taking. And who knows? Like, sometimes I say a week, but often it ends up being 2, 3, 4, and I there's no
You
pressure there,
okay
because
now?
I'm
Yeah.
I'm doing what I need to do to fill
It's your
up
page.
myself.
Yeah. It's your page.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I'm doing what I need to do to not to make sure that I've got things to post, but to make sure that I'm still doing the work that I need to do, and then posting comes secondary. The
Yes.
the the
Yes.
primary thing for
Mm-hmm.
me is I'm
Mm-hmm.
writing still because this is it still is my
It's my thing.
lifeline.
Yeah.
It's
It's
my
it's your
thing. And
thing.
so, very like primary, before I even consider posting, it's I'm writing because I need to write, and this is how I get through my day, and this is how I process. And
Mm-hmm.
secondary to all of that, then comes the posting, and then comes the
Yes.
sharing with the world. So if that becomes my primary thing, and I can always feel it, it's like I
Mm-hmm.
need to post. Well, no, I
Mm-hmm.
actually need to dig deeper into myself and make sure that I'm looking after myself, because that all of that stuff doesn't actually matter. What
Yes.
matters is that I'm still doing the work that I need to do. And then
Mm-hmm.
when I'm ready, and secondary to everything else, then
Mm-hmm.
comes the sharing.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. I agree with every word. I think you're
Mm,
doing a great job.
thank
I
you.
remember you posted one time you're taking a time off for a month or something like that. But
Mm,
I was like, yes, you go, girl, take your time off,
yes,
right? It's necessary. You can't avoid it, and I think people would understand. I find like people who engaged in readers, right?
mm,
And when you have fans, of course, I'm one of them. When you have fans, they want you to be well,
yes,
right? It's the people who are following you to bash you who
yes,
might have some not so nice words, right? But you can always have gratitude to the people who are there for you. That will
absolutely.
outweigh the negatives, right? So I
Mm,
really love that. I really love what you said about taking a break, because I want listeners to know what you go through as, I don't know if it's called content creating for you, but
Mm.
eventually you're out there in the social media sharing something. So writing is not easy.
No.
It should be a full-time job. It's really hard, right? So taking time off is really important, and
Mm.
you're still working your job, your daily job,
Yeah.
so it's a
Yeah.
lot of pressure, right? You still need to pay the bills. Now,
Yes.
would you call writing your spring or fall? How, like the moment of writing, which is kind of shift,
Mm.
right? What season that would be?
And that's interesting because I can see it as both.
Mm-hmm.
Because writing has been both a catalyst for change, which is fall, and it's also been a catalyst for joy, which I would see as spring. And
Yes.
so I think if I'm thinking winter, and then I'm thinking, and it seems to be as the world goes as well, spring,
Mm-hmm.
because and it's not just like the 3 months as we imagine it. Like my winter was long,
Yeah.
and it endured
Canadian
for a
winter.
long time. Yeah, yeah, basically. And so
Yeah.
it was long, and so it's funny because right now, like I have felt as if I've been in a soul winter, and you can probably tell from a lot of my writings recently have been
Mm-hmm.
very winter focused. But now it's like the I can feel it in my heart that spring is arriving, and and in Australia here as well, it is arriving as well, quite literally, but I feel it in here. And
Mm-hmm.
that is very similar to the feelings, after I was leaving my winter,
Mm-hmm.
that things just started I found myself smiling more, and I found myself
Mm-hmm.
looking at the tiny beauties and
Mm-hmm.
finding joy in the smaller things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think writing would be the catalyst for my first spring.
First.
Um,
Mm.
and
I think
so, because
it changed with seasons too. It doesn't stay in one
yes,
season. Yeah.
no, it's not like I've come out of winter and now I'm just in a perpetual spring or perpetual summer. I have found myself in winter, and I've found myself in autumn over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's having grace for whatever season presents itself,
Mm-hmm.
because just like in the world, we can't rush the
Mm-hmm.
seasons. Like I hate summer, and already it's getting too hot for me. And I'm like, when
Thank you.
is
Someone
winter
who hates
coming?
summer like me.
And so already I can feel myself thinking, when is winter coming? When is the cooler weather coming? But
Mm-hmm.
and sure, I'm ready for winter to be here again already, but in my soul I ask those same questions when I'm in a winter. It's like, when am I going to feel joy again? When am I going to feel motivation? When am I going to feel inspiration again? But it's, what can I find now in this season? What can I do with where I am now? How am I making the most of this season? Is my winter a self-care season? Do I need to take time off? Do I need to cut back my work capacity because I'm still not at 100% capacity because I'm dealing with other things, And some winters and some valley floors are, as I imagine the mountains, some of those arduous journeys are for rest, and they
Mm-hmm.
are for filling up your cup. And for some of them, it is for, like other valley floors, it is getting grit, and it's getting perspective, and it's growing. And so, I have had to give myself the grace to know which one is which. Am I
Mm-hmm.
resting, or am I preparing my soul? Am I growing in patience? What am I doing in this season, and how can I best take that with me as I go, instead of just longing for when is the next season arriving, because that's not how it works. And I would be wasting my seasons if
Yes.
I wasn't searching for what I can look for now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to look back on my winter and be like, wow, I really didn't do with, what I could have. Yeah, winter sucked, and it was really hard, and I didn't feel like myself. But there's always things that we can be doing in the moment to take
Mm-hmm.
with us as we go, instead of just longing for the next season, because that gets tiring too.
Mm. Yes, it's like waiting
Mm.
for the happy ending.
Yeah.
Why would you want things to end? So I love what you said. I think the dominant thing that shifted in your life is feeling your feelings and know what to do with
Mm.
them.
Mm.
right? Because you could say, I'm very joyful, but what are you going to do with the joy? Right? Or
Mm.
I, at this point, I'm sad. Or like when we mentioned the writer's jealousy, right? What are you going to do with that jealousy? Because
Mm.
one of the things I've said before, jealousy, when it sits down, it becomes envy.
Yes.
But when you take it and you work with it, it could be an inspiration. It could be a new book,
Yes.
right? It could be
Yes.
a new poem. It could be, who knows? It could be an idea for a reel that will go viral for you and change your life.
Mm.
So instead of dwelling on it and thinking why that person have this and that, right? You could use that jealousy. So and I think each emotion, like your seasons, have something you need to do, and it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be a successful task like writing.
Mm-hmm.
It could be you understanding your feelings and what to do with
Mm.
them, being more self-aware. It could be you sitting with your partner and talking about something that you have to talk about, right?
Mm.
It could be anything, who knows? It depends on the person, right? So yeah, that's what I'm my reflection for that.
Yes.
So I want to ask the name, the soft word, why?
Good question. I think I didn't. I think my reasoning I have only understood in the looking back. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't choose it particularly for any reason, and that sounds silly because it's
No, it's
but
fine.
it's very representative now. Is one thing I have all and I have a post that I've made from one of my quotes is my softness is my greatest act of rebellion. And I think it takes courage and it takes a lot to remain soft after you've been through so much that could have hardened you.
Mm,
And now that I look back, is like, yeah, I could see that in the moment when I was thinking the soft word is
mm-hmm.
these are words that are soft that have come from difficult times. But now when I look back, now I'm thinking, no, this name is very representative of this is my rebellion, my
Mm,
softness, my choice to stay
mm-hmm. To
soft
be
because
soft.
I do believe it is a choice,
Mm-hmm.
my choice to not let that anger harden me and close myself off to so much joy and so much love that I could feel again. My choice to stay soft and stay kind in a world that gives us a million reasons every day
Not
to
to.
be hard and really
Mm,
close yourself off. That is very
no.
representative of what I'm about now.
Mm,
Is yes, we all face so much pain, but
yeah.
it's what we do with it afterwards. What am I letting this
Mm,
am I letting this so I am letting it change the course of my life, but am I letting it do that negatively, whereas
mm,
I'm going to shut myself off forever and never let anything good in again? Or am I going to use this as my rebellion staying soft? And so now
mm-hmm.
that's very reflective in my writings is I try to bring that softness into I write about some hard emotions, but I really try to bring that gentleness into it because
Mm,
that is me to my core.
mm-hmm. I really, oh gosh. I, as someone who chose not to be soft
Mm,
at some point in my life, and I wasn't aware, of course, because I was too young to understand
yeah, of course.
um, softness. And I wasn't like negative or evil or anything. It's more like I chose to be strong, and not
Yes.
necessarily strong is an opposite for softness, because you
Mm,
can have both actually.
mm,
And sometimes being soft is being strong, right? And being
mm,
strong is being soft, so they could walk together, right? But I,
absolutely.
at some point in my life, I looked at softness as weakness, right?
Mm,
And it came with that burden of responsibility that I have to stand up for everything around me, right? I
mm,
have to like speak up. I have, and the only way for you to speak up is to like be this strong person, you know. So I really love the choice. I don't know what to say about it. It just it lightened some, I don't know, light bulb in my head.
yeah.
Um, that you subconsciously made that choice, and it came through your writings, your choices, right?
Mhm.
Because sometimes we choose things we don't like. I remember my friends would ask me, why did you do that? That doesn't make sense. I'm like, I don't know why.
Yes.
It's my intuition. I let it lead the way because it
Yeah.
knows better, and in a couple of years you're like, yeah, I was right.
Yes.
So yeah, I really love the software. Okay, so um so we talked about winter, we talked about spring, we talked about fall. You don't like summer. Why?
Literally, like in the literal sense, when I get hot,
Got
my
bothered.
temper gets short. I don't, and I work with kids, and I work in a very hot gym, and I've got 12 kids who all want to ask me the same question, and everyone's talking, and I just can't cope with that. I can't
Mm,
cope with feeling hot and
mm,
not being able to do anything about it. It's just,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not a season that I enjoy, that
Mhm.
perpetual heat. Like, and you think, oh, nighttime's coming, I can get cool. No, you can't,
No,
because it just doesn't cool down.
no.
In the emotional sense, I am still at a loss of perhaps what summer means for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think I don't think it's like I haven't really delved into it, if I'm quite honest. I have very clear meanings for what winter is, wintering, and autumn is the change and spring's the joy.
I'll
Maybe I'm
give you
just really
ideas for
angry in
summer.
summer. Okay.
I'll give you ideas for summer. But let me. You said something. You said you work with kids. What do you do with
Mm.
kids?
I'm a gymnastics coach.
Oh, cool.
And so I grew up as a gymnast. I love it. It brings a lot of change in my day because I work
Mm.
from home during the day, and then in the afternoon I go to the gym, and I coach kids for 4 or 5 hours, and I love it so
Mm-hmm.
much.
Oh,
I just love,
nice.
I really do, and I just love seeing kids,
Mm-hmm.
grow and be like, I can do this, and it is really cool, but just not when they're all asking you the same question and
No,
trying to talk over you, and
no,
it's
no,
hot.
no.
But I do love
I
it.
yeah, no, I can relate to working with kids because I worked in after school program. I don't know if you have
Yes.
that in Australia,
Yep.
but I did, and now I'm working as a structure therapist for autistic children. Autistic children
Mm.
are different because I work one on one, so I would have
Yeah.
one child, but working in a gym with a bunch of kids, I always avoided it. Like my supervisor has to be like, Sabrine, go to the gym, and me looking at her. She's like, I know you hate it. I was like, then don't send me there.
It's a battleground in there.
It's not. I'm like, can I sit down and color with the kids? Why do I have to be at the gym? So I can relate to that. So I
Mhm.
really I love that we have so many relapses in our life. Like
Mm.
2020 was a year of change,
Yes.
right? For different reasons for us, but it's also associated with grief because I
Yeah.
grieved my health a lot. And we started writing. You started your page like kind
Yes.
of a year ahead of me. You welcomed me. Like I still like in the first post, it was you welcoming me to the community, right? I was like, oh my gosh. It was just my first time. How did you find me? I have no idea. Or I followed you. Maybe I followed you.
I
I
think
don't know what
so.
happened. Yeah, I don't know what happened. So, and then, then we worked with kids. We both, I
Mm.
absolutely hate summer. And I remember, okay, let me tell you this story. When I was a kid, I would read books, and those books would be written in British, for example, written by a
Mm.
British writer, and they would say, "Such a lovely summer day, the sun is shining," and I'm like, "What are they talking about?" And then they're like, "It's gloomy today, it's raining." So I come from Sudan, where rain is a bless. You don't
Mm.
say it's a bad day because it rains. Well,
Mm.
for some people, like we get floods, and that's the bad side of rain, which is very unfortunate. But the weather is, because our degrees are like 50 degrees. That's too hot, right?
That's way too
And
hot.
yeah, that's way too hot. Can you imagine? Yeah. So, and then I lived in Dubai. It's hot and humid,
Mm.
right? So when I come here and the summer comes, I'm like already stressed. I kid you not. I stay at home, right?
Yeah.
My friends know if I want to go out, It has to be like the movie theater inside a place. We're meeting at a
Yeah.
restaurant, and all of them are like, Sabrina, let's enjoy the summer. And I'm like, what enjoyment? What are you guys talking about? No. And it would be like 25 or 27. It's not 50,
Yeah.
but I don't want to face it. Right. So, and I think one of the reasons also is light. I get headaches.
Mm.
So I see summer as light. Maybe
Mm.
for you, summer could represent light, right? Whatever light is in your life. I don't know.
Mm.
I just gave you an idea. Like,
Mm.
um, search for it. Search for the pattern in your life. Maybe it's light, and maybe it's
Mm.
anger. Depends. Like, I know you're gonna sit down with this and think about it because I do
Yes.
that. Because I do that. So far we don't
Yeah.
have a summer. Okay.
Mm.
So how does it feel like to go back into a season?
I think, especially for when I feel myself entering autumn or I feel myself entering winter, I think it's riddled with fear for me
Mm-hmm.
because I've been there before, and I'm not saying it's going to look the same or it's going to feel the same, but you kind of get the idea of the certain emotions that you are going to be experiencing. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's fearful because I know that winter has been so dark.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's that fear of going back into the darkness and facing those emotions again. I
Mm-hmm.
think I also am fairly optimistic when I go into it. What am I going to learn this time? What is this season here to teach me? But
Mm-hmm.
mainly my initial response is fear. Am I backpedaling? Am I going backwards in the seasons? Am I regressing?
Mm.
No, because growth is cyclical. So we're going to go around these seasons
Over
forever,
and over, yeah.
over and over. And it was like you were saying with the steps of grief is initially I think the 7 or something, but I have found it that they didn't come in order, but they came over and over again. So sure, I could reach that place of acceptance, which I think
Mm-hmm.
is the final step,
Mm-hmm.
that acceptance, but then I could find myself back in that was very cyclical as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think because I knew the emotions attached to my previous winters, it is fearful. I feel
Mm-hmm.
fearful.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about entering a spring, I get excited because I know that this is the light at the end of the tunnel. This is what I've worked. This is what I've crawled through the desert for. This is my reprieve. This is my break. This is my joy.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel excited about that. But when I think about winter and I think about autumn, it's like change is scary. When I feel those leaves and I feel the foliage that can no longer I can't sustain, which is okay because change is okay and change is positive, but it's scary to change and it's scary
Yes.
to let go of the things that I've held onto year round and
Mm-hmm.
now it's my time to let them go. That's scary.
It is very
And
scary.
so I think there is a lot of fear for me when I start to feel a soul winter settle in or a soul autumn settle in. It's like this is,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not scary. It's just because I know those
Uncomfortable.
emotions. It's uncomfortable, and I know from previous seasons I can get the idea of what I'm going to be facing. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
look different, and the outcomes are going to be different. But there's definitely that fear attached to it because it's like, here we go again. What am I going to face this time? What's going to be brought up this time? What am I going to be
Mm-hmm.
asked to let go of? That I
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily want to let go of, but I
Mm-hmm.
need to move forward, these sorts of things. So, fear, when we're
Phew.
talking about not negative seasons, because I don't think any of them are negative except summer,
No, it's not
but,
except summer. So far for us, both of us. Sorry,
but
summer lovers.
yeah, sorry guys. But then that excitement when it comes to spring,
Hmm.
because I love the way that like right now I can tell you it feels like a tingle. It
Yeah.
feels like the hairs on my arms are sticking up because
Yeah.
it's getting warmer in here and the
Mm-hmm.
light's coming back in here again and
Mm-hmm.
and I'm feeling that joy again. It feels like a tingle, but I definitely do when I think about going like this season won't last forever. And yes, that's also scary because it's not saying joy won't last forever because I can still find joy in my winter and autumn seasons. But It's
Still,
definitely,
yeah. I
yeah.
think it's something close, not
Mm,
necessarily is. It's sort of a PTSD, kind of.
mm,
Like a one symptom of it is the idea. What you said, really something I want to say is here we go again, right? Because you're a hopeful person, you know the season is
mm,
going to change and you've accepted that, but you hope
mm.
for the good seasons that you enjoy the most to last more, right? And
Yes.
sometimes the season ends really short, or like
Mm,
you're not aware that's going to end because something comes out of the blue, right? And
yeah.
you're like, here we go again, right? And you know there's the anticipation of the things that you went through before, and then anxiety of how this
Mm,
is going to change what you say, like the things you're going to let go, etc., etc. And
yeah.
I think that's a healthy thing,
Mm,
because if you remember, you said grief has some numbness into it, right? So if you were not in a healthy um, relationship with yourself in
mm,
terms of change into winter season, whatever the season that you're kind of fearful of, you would have numbed yourself.
mm,
But instead of numbing yourself, you are feeling it, and you say, okay, this is fearful, but I'm gonna do it. It's
mm.
okay. I might lose something, but let's go and see. This might be the biggest change in my life. That's
Yeah.
it. So I love this definition of it. What you said, the fear, but you know what? It gave me this. So I'm a visual person. That's why I like writing films. Um, you hike first in the first of the opening scene. I would imagine you going into winter and prepared. And when I say I prepared, I
Mm,
say the hat, the
mm.
jacket, the boots, right? And it starts out of nowhere, and you're like, it was such a good walk, good hike, and then out of nowhere, the winter comes, and you're like confused, and then you start getting chilly, maybe some fears, and you can see the
Mm,
change in yourself, and maybe we can cut to your first winter and what happened in it. And then when we come back, when even in winter, you would see you start writing and changing things,
mm.
and then it goes into fall and spring, right? Or like spring first, and then we just gonna jump summer because we don't know what to do with it.
Yes.
We go into fall again, right?
Mm,
But your first four season, when they happened, you're always kind of unprepared for it.
yeah.
But when winter comes again, you probably this time have your jacket, right? Maybe you're missing
Yeah.
your gloves, but at least you have a jacket. You can put your hands inside of your pocket, right?
Mm,
And then when spring comes, and then fall comes, each time you somehow prepared for each season. And this what
mm.
happens when we go through seasons of life. Or like, for example, I always tell myself, I made this mistake again, I'm making it again, but this time I know this is a mistake.
Yes.
This
Yes.
time
I'm
I
prepared.
know,
Mm,
because this is how I overcome this mistake, by not, because sometimes we're like, we're stupid why we make the same mistakes over and over. But the patterns comes into our life to change, to teach us something about ourselves and about
mm,
everything around us, right? Sometimes you repeat the same pattern or the same mistake or the same trauma because there's still more to learn. And I think it goes, you repeating the pattern, then you realize it's a pattern. Then when it comes
mm,
next time, you need to repeat it to know how you actually you be self-aware of your feelings and why you are repeating it and
mm.
everything around it. Then, because recognizing the pattern, the mistake, the season change, all of that, is not how you change it. You need to feel it again. Recognizing
Yeah.
is the first step, right? And then when you
Mm,
go through it again, you know how to be prepared next time for it not to happen. Or for next time when it happens, you know how to deal with it. And this is how you get yourself out of the pattern,
mm.
right? And if you try to skip those steps, I mean, there's some genius people. I'm still yet to meet them, but if they do skip the steps, please DM me the recipe. I'll appreciate
Yes.
it, because there's time wasted here. But I still believe that we need to, it's not a time wasted, and we need to go through
No.
that. It's how, at least for me as a writer, I always tell myself, well, it gave me a poem.
Yes. Nothing, and I am a firm believer that nothing is ever wasted. You know,
Yeah.
like what you're saying is, as long as I'm looking back and reflecting on what did I learn? What am I
Hmm.
taking with me next time? What would I do differently next time?
Hmm.
I haven't lost anything. I've
Yes.
only gained. Even though my season may have felt like loss, I've
Hmm.
only gained things that are going to help me be more prepared. I love what you're saying about next time I might not have the mittens, but I'll have the jacket, you know, and then
Yes.
after that you gain and you learn things and you bring them into your season. So as long as you're reflecting and looking back
Hmm.
and putting those things in your metaphorical backpack for
Yes.
next time, you haven't
Yes.
lost anything. You've only
No.
gained, and I love that.
Yes, yes, you've earned it. Yeah. I hope both you and I go and write some stuff after this
Definitely.
conversation. Right? Okay. So, what was, I had a question here that I forgot about, because sometimes the conversation is so good that
Yes.
all the questions just go. Okay, since you have the soft word, and people who are your fans are going to be watching, I know that you share a lot of Q&As and you talk a lot
Mm.
to your followers. But what are things that you think they don't know about you yet, that you um I feel like so far in this conversation, they'll be knowing new things, right?
Yeah.
But what is something you didn't share with me or them that you think, it's not that they should know, but you want to share with them and me?
Oh, that's hard because I don't know.
You have that in
I
your brain.
no, I feel. I mean, obviously, there's lots of things. I'm sure there's lots of things that I just can't think of,
Mm,
but I really
it's
don't
all good.
know.
It's all good. I feel like I put you on a spot. Okay,
No,
tell
that's
me, like,
okay.
it's all good. Tell me a moment in your childhood that you remember first thing when I ask you this question.
Hmm. Can it be like a bit
It doesn't
funny?
have to be joyful or sad, or it's just a moment. Let's take
Okay.
that.
Um. That's interesting. We used to breed guinea pigs,
Okay.
and the very last guinea pig that I had, I accidentally fell down the stairs and sat on it. That's
Oh,
the first thing that got. I know it's not sad, and I shouldn't laugh, but this is
'cause I've,
my fiance.
like I've seen people stepping on chicks before, the chicken babies.
Oh no, and the thing is, it's not like I didn't. I just was walking down the stairs from having it in my bed. Like I loved this thing so much. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, that was the last guinea pig. But I would love to get another one. My fiance isn't convinced that we should have guinea pigs after that. That's okay. But that's just a random little fun fact. I love my guinea pigs, but after that, I
Yeah.
was a bit traumatized.
Yeah, of course you would. You feel guilty. I remember we gifted
Yes.
one of our friends like two birds, and
Yep.
one of them died because it got stung by what do you call it, an ant or ant.
Yes.
I don't know the
Yeah.
right precision. So I just died because I think it didn't. I don't know.
Oh,
There's some sort of a chemical reaction here. I think it was
yeah.
very weak.
Interesting.
Yeah, right. So she felt so bad. She felt as if she killed it. And she's like,
Yes.
it's because I didn't clean, and the ants came to eat the food, and then they sting.
Oh,
And I'm like, but it's okay. You have the other bird,
yes.
But she was crying, so I understand that. I've never had a pet before. I do love cats, but right now I can't have pets because of my immune
Mm.
system. But like I understand how you felt. There's trauma there, yeah, yeah. But that's
Yes.
that's some sort funny slash sad. I love that it's the one that came to your mind. Okay. Do you remember something someone said to you was so nice? In your like a comment that made you think, yeah, I love that I shared. Like, um, because sometimes when someone comment, it's like it validates me as
Mm.
a writer. right? Even now when I share my reels, some people are like, when they I get some DMs and it's like, wow, it's like, wow, I love this. Thank God I started the podcast, right? Because you still have some doubts. I know that.
Yes.
Do you remember
Yeah.
some vivid moment like that?
I I think there's a comment that I get often, which altogether does make me feel really valid. It's when someone says, I really needed this. And
Mm.
I think I find that so heartwarming because like you mentioned it earlier, you said that sometimes you go back to your work and you criticize and you
Mm-hmm.
find the faults and then you don't that's how I am. And often after I've shared something, I'll read it and I'll be like, oh,
Mm.
maybe that wasn't my best work, or maybe that, I don't know,
Mm.
maybe no one's going to relate to that and
Yeah.
I'm just going to seem
Some
really
sort of
silly. But
cringe. Yeah.
yes, but oftentimes when I feel like that, I get these comments to say, I really need that, or those words met me where I'm at. And because every time I post, I'm thinking, let this reach the person that it needs to, where they're at, when they need it. And so when
Mm-hmm.
I get that, that's like, yes, I'm doing what I've been called to do in
Mm-hmm.
sharing this. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, like, because people often ask me, do you write every day and you share what you've written? And I'm like, I have a massive backlog of drafts,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't go off like, oh, I wrote this one last, so I'll share that. I will scroll through them and be intentional of how am I
What you post.
feeling today? What am
Mm.
I what am I relating to first and foremost here? What do I want to put out into the world? And so when someone comes back and say, I really needed this, and you can feel the genuineness flowing out of that. It's like, wow, these
Mm-hmm.
words did more than just enter an algorithm. They entered someone's heart and they did
Amazing.
what they were
Yeah.
meant to do as well. And that's
Mm-hmm.
really impactful for me. That's like, yes, I am doing what I am meant to do.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that, and
Mm,
I love it. I hope you get more comments like that.
thank
So,
you.
as someone who started writing and took the brave decision of sharing, what would you tell someone who's fearful of writing by itself? Because I know I had the urge to write, and sometimes I'll be like, I don't, I don't want to be a writer, right? I don't know why. I'm still
Mm,
navigating that fear because I still
mm,
have it, right? Sometimes I feel the urge to sit down and write a story. I'm like, I'll do it tomorrow. But I know that's avoidance, and maybe
yeah.
avoidance of work, because I know I have to put a lot of work while I have so much to do, right? But I know that I'm a writer and I want to write. But there are people out there who are still fearful of writing, and there are people out there who have so much good and amazing and
Mm,
phenomenal work, and they keep it to themselves. There's nothing wrong with keeping it to themselves, but the world would love to hear them.
yes.
Right? So what would you tell those people as someone who made that step yourself?
The first thing that comes to mind is don't be afraid to write terrible drafts first
Mm-hmm.
because you see these incredible poems, that
Mm-hmm.
these amazing writers are sharing, and you can be often tricked, and like maybe they just had really good luck in getting that out on the first go. Because occasionally I do have a poem like that where I don't edit it. I just like, this was just a flow. I'm getting it out there.
Mm-hmm.
But don't be afraid to write something that you're not super sure of at first, because then you can labor over that. You can change it. You can sit with it. You can create some distance and then come back to it and see, how do I feel about this now? What am I going to change? What didn't really work? And so I don't know if you've read it, I would suggest reading it for anyone who is a writer, anyone who just loves words or is a poet. It's called Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. And she takes you through all these wonderful steps, but one of her chapters is just called, right, it's got a bad word in it, but it says, write terrible drafts first, and don't
Mm-hmm.
be afraid of doing that, because no one ever starts with a masterpiece. The first
No.
thing that you write is never perfect, and maybe it never will be perfect, and maybe you can always look back and think, oh, I'd probably change this now.
Mm-hmm.
But you have even I find that to start the flow, it's like a plug. I've got to write something. I've just got to write something.
Mm-hmm.
Write something and don't criticize, because I find that my inner critic is very loud, and especially if I'm feeling like, because often, I mean, it's probably called writer's block, but often I feel like I have so much inspiration in here and in here, but they're not communicating, and so I can't get it out. And so
It's
oftentimes
very
it's like,
frustrating.
it is frustrating, and so it's like I'm pulling the plug. I'm just writing something, and I'm not putting judgment on that. I'm not saying, well, that was really terrible or that was really good. I'm just writing something. I'm getting it out, and often I find that, well, then it unplugs everything. These two are talking now, and now I'm writing something that I'm really connecting with. And so if you feel like you want to write, just write something, and don't put your own judgment onto it, because that's part of you as well. Like, that's come from you, and so that is what you're putting out there. And so just write something, start somewhere. You have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
My first, like, and I find that often people will, and this is totally up to them, like, I've never deleted any of my Instagram posts, because I love to go back. I scroll to the bottom, all the way to the bottom, and I'm like, often
Cringy.
often my first thought is, what was I doing? And like, what was, but that was,
I'm getting the cringe
but then
now.
like, and I remember, like, when I first started my page, I went through this, like, am I writing poetry? Or when I look back, I'm like, was I trying to be like an inspirational or something? Like they were not inspirational. But that was me just starting somewhere, and I have to have grace for that part of me, because I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't let that version of me just start and just put something out there. And so I don't delete them, because I love to go back and look how far we've come. Look at how my writing has changed. Look at how I've become my own self as a writer. Because in the very early days, I was like, I would scroll through others and I was like, oh, I love how that person uses imagery, and I love how this person is really into personification and all these things. But I had to go through my own, it's like a chisel and a big rock. And every piece I'm just chiseling away, because I'm finding who I am as a writer, and my style is not like the next person's, and it's not like that person's, and that's okay, because I'm bringing something different to the world. And so I would just say, just start somewhere, just write something. That everything that you write is the little chisel, and you're chipping away, and eventually you will find your own flow and your own style
voice.
that really works for you. Yeah, your voice, exactly. And so, and you'll find that, but don't bring the judgment and the pressure and the expectations, because that is what I have found has gotten in the way of some of my best work. It's because I become really judgmental, but those words are part of me, and I wouldn't want someone else to come along and say that. So why am I saying that to myself?
Yes, you're being kind. This is one of the best advices I heard for writers. You know why? Because you just validated them. Because I remember when I was, I edit a lot. Okay, I'll go back and I'm sure you do the same. I'm pretty sure you do, right? I have drafts. I have drafts that had 3 words. I have drafts that has 1 word.
Yes.
Because like, there's this word that is bugging my brain, but I don't know what to do with it. Right? Like, I think for 3 weeks I had this word worm, but I wasn't sure what is it. Is it worm smiling eyes? Is it heartwarming? Is it like, what is this worm? What where? Maybe I was feeling warm inside of my heart and brain, but I just didn't know how to express it. So I wrote worm, and then I associated with things that I love being warm, like a warming smile. I don't know. I don't even remember what I wrote about it. But I had this 1 word, and then this word like came out of it, 3 poems or 3 writing, right? And it doesn't have to be a long one. It could be like 3 sentences, 4, 5, or a whole poem. It doesn't matter. So before that, when I used to write and edit a lot, I used to think I'm not a writer, I'm just an editor. Until I saw one of my favorite poet. He's Arab, and I saw that they took a picture of his notebook. And you know what he had? He had like poem, and then he would like scratch a word and write another word, and it was a process of editing. And I was like, okay, because you know how I was thinking about poets and writers? I was thinking that they get inspiration of words, the perfect
Mm-hmm.
words, and they just come
Yes.
as they sit. They don't edit it, right? And I was
No.
thinking, I don't have that talent. I don't have that talent, right? But I know that I see things differently. Like there's imagery in my brain, or like I see things, I
Mm.
connect the dots. Like I'm still in search for my style, and I think forever I will be,
Mm.
until I don't know when I'll find it, but I feel like I'm still in search of who I am as a writer. And it doesn't bother me actually. I'm enjoying that. I am enjoying
Yeah,
that
I
because
love
it
that.
allows me to write more. It allows me to like experiment more and feel more feelings and write more not just poems but other things, right? So I think your advice just validated lots of people, and I hope those people sit down, right? Or like you don't have to sit down.
Mm.
Also, sometimes I'm like in the bus, in the
Yes.
train. I love writing in the train. It's so inspiring. Oh, I wrote my favorite stories in the train, I have to say, to the point where I don't want to drive. I want to take the train all the time because, like, literally, I get the best inspiration there. And I love that.
Yes.
I love what you just said. The validation is real, and I do hope people, writers,
Mm.
see this. I hope what you said it reached the right crowd. We're putting it
Mm.
out there, and I hope it helps
Yes.
someone, right? And also validated me as someone who, inspired by you, to know that you're going through the same process, and you went through the
Mm.
same process, and you look back and cringe at your work, right? Because that's uh it's an honest and it's honest thing to say, and brave, as a
Yeah.
writer, because our ego tell us we have to be good all the time, but that's not true, right? Okay, let me recap. Okay, you're in a hike, right? It starts green and beautiful, right? It's springy, and then you go into winter, unexpected winter, and prepared for it. And then we take you to the moment where you felt all of this grief. And then, as the grief goes, and the anger and the avoidance by accommodating for others, right? All the stages of grief you mentioned, and then you go into writing, and we see the spring coming,
Mm.
right? And then we see you go through, your writing process, your life, finding joy in grief, and grow, beyond your grief with the changing of seasons, right? And then the next time winter comes, you're more prepared, maybe with a jacket, maybe with a mittens, who knows? You had the preparation you had, and we go through this with you season by season, right? And each season, I think, will bring you to a moment in your life where, is associated with that season, right?
Mm.
So, and then we reach now. Of course, your film, it doesn't have an end. You still, you're still out there giving us so many
Mm.
words. You're still living your season and feeling them, right? We're still going to figure out summer.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's warmth, maybe it's light, maybe it's anger. We don't know yet, but I think one day we will. Maybe we'll see it through your
Mm.
writings. So, what do you think right now is a theme that keeps, recurring in your film?
Grace.
Grace.
Yeah.
Why grace?
Because it's something that I have forever struggled to give myself
Mm,
and to give others. And so I think at the moment I'm in a season of learning to extend the same grace that I have been given
mhm,
outwards and inwards. And
mm,
so that is recurring through so many different things, giving people the grace to grow in their own way and giving people the grace to make mistakes and giving myself the grace to make mistakes and not be perfect all the time. And so I think definitely a recurring theme at the moment is how can I extend grace, the grace that I've been given to myself, and
mhm.
how can I continue to give that to others?
Beautiful. This is the first time I have grace in a
Mm.
thing. And I think you're giving it through your words and your page
Mm,
with people and everything you do, your Q&A and everything you share. At least this is how it reaches me as a person,
mm.
you know? And oh gosh, this conversation is so good.
Yes.
This I'm enjoying it. Okay, let's oh gosh. I have to admit this. I need to give some grace to myself. I'm
Mm,
still not there yet. Thank you for pointing this theme out because I need now to
mm,
sit and think about it for myself, right?
mm,
And I love it because somehow you're when I was thinking of what to wear today, and I don't like dressing up for the podcast. I
mm,
always want to wear like some neutral color. I was thinking of wearing something warm because your page give me that. And now when you said
Thank you.
grace, I thought, oh gosh, yeah, her page gives grace energy, right? So amazing. I love
Thank
this.
you.
Feel graceful. Okay, let's choose a name for your film, which will be the name for
Mm.
the podcast. Yeah.
Well, that's so hard. But the first thing that comes to mind is, and we can change it if we don't like it, but is soft rebellion.
Self
That
rebellion.
is, oh, soft rebellion. That my my softness is my greatest act of rebellion, and so if we shorten that, soft rebellion would be what comes to mind first, because I
Yeah.
feel like that is what this whole journey is learning to do and to
Hmm.
be, and how do I remain so,
Soft.
and I can still feel these hard feelings, but at the end of the day, I am just choosing to, this is not going to harden me, this is not going to have a negative lifelong effect, and I can take the lessons away from it, but how am I continuing to just remain soft through it all?
Hmm. So soft rebellion, not self. Soft, right?
Soft.
Yes.
Mm.
Okay, because I heard it soft first, but you're right. You're right. In my head, it was either you chose this, but I was gonna say the soft word anyways because I love the
Mm.
name. It's one of the things that I was jealous of. I was like, why didn't I think about the soft word? Such an easy name. What is the like? Why did I go all the way to lemons? I am writing words, but but you already took it. How dare you? I love it. It matches who you are, how graceful you
Mm.
are, and I love the name Soft Rebellion. It's different and it actually represents you
Mm.
and your journey, right? I have a question that um, you can say no to, but do you want to share a poem with us that you love or you think is um, goes with what we spoke about?
Mm.
You can read it. You don't have to remember. I know
Yeah,
you don't memorize.
that's one thing I'm really not good at, is like, I can't remember my own poems off the top of
I
my head.
validate you because I remember nothing. Absolutely nothing. I
Yes.
have to read. It's like it come
Yep.
out of my brain, it's out, it's written. Bye.
Yes.
So
Okay, so I do have a piece that have I wrote, I shared it on the 10th of July, and I think I did write it around then. So this was at the start of my most recent feeling that change into autumn, and I
mm-hmm,
think I still relate to it changing and coming into spring. So
mm-hmm.
one of my longer ones, because I think you'll notice I don't write long poetry, and I'm okay with that because I have felt the pressure to write these magnificent pieces, but I just don't, and that's not
Yeah, I
my
can relate
style,
to
is a
that.
lot
Yeah.
shorter. Yes. But anyway, so it says, "Oh, to possess the courage of the first tree in autumn, boldly leaning into change, dressing herself in a million sequins of golden hues, to feel the air changing and know within that it must start with one, for change rolls like dominoes across the unlikeliest of forests. Oh, to be so confident in the losing, trusting that on the other side of long winter nights is a spring so warm that it returns all that was lost tenfold. Oh, to cradle a courage so thick that it permeates bones like a warm sap leaking from within, stand, behold, for I am the first tree in autumn to dress up in golden hues, a final dance with change as my last leaves dwindle to forest floor. This is not loss, this is the art of quiet trust in what is ahead.
Wow.
Thank you.
I just realized that we share the love for trees too.
Yes, that's so true.
Yeah. I just realized I love trees so much. I
Mm,
love trees in winter and I love trees in fall the most. I think
yes.
my most loving part in winter because um here's why. Because people love green trees, right?
Mm,
Me, I think of leaves as they change, they go, because I love its strength. So I feel like branches are the essence with the roots
mm,
because they remain strong through all the season, even if they lost in a storm or anything, but the tree remains and it dresses again in green and then gold, right? And those change.
mm,
So I really feel the essence of trees in winter more. And people are like, they
yes.
look dead. And I'm like, no, this is their strongest phase, you know?
Yes.
And I have thousands of pictures of trees,
Yes,
you
I'm the
know,
same.
and
I would take pictures everywhere of trees.
yeah, it's like my brother always says, "Why are you so obsessed with trees?" I was like, "I have no idea. I just love trees." I love this poem because it gave me the sense of bravery, being
Mm,
brave, to be the first tree in autumn, to decide to dress, knowing that it will lose the leaf,
mm,
right? And I think it relates to the fear. This is my analysis. I think it relates to like sometimes when we're so fearful of the season change, we we rush into it so we get it over
mm,
with, right? And usually we're labeled to be the brave ones, but sometimes we're the most fearful ones that decided
mm,
um to take the jump because it's necessary, but there's beauty
mm,
in that, right? And maybe the first Tree in Autumn would be the last one next season. Who knows? But
mm,
it chose to be the first this season, right? This is what I got the
mm.
feelings I had from your poem. It's very beautiful.
Thank you.
I thank you for sharing it. My last question would be in this talk. Did you have any takeaway? Something that you haven't felt before? A realization?
I think actually it just popped into my head as I was reading that poem. That poem literally sums up pretty much everything that we've talked about. You know, loss. The
Mm-hmm.
loss in seasons is not loss; it's gain.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I just have felt so cohesively how ingrained the seasons are within my soul and how deeply I I think how deeply not that I'm forever looking for this has to mean something,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that I do mine the seasons to look for the gold, like, you know, to look for the gold and look for the takeaways. And I think that poem just really, I just felt really almost like overwhelmed with emotion as I was reading because I was like, this really sums up me and this
Mm-hmm.
sums up everything that we've talked about so cohesively. And I just feel like just moments that happen like that, you're like, that was meant, everything that went before was meant to happen so that when we got here, it
Mm-hmm.
would be like, this
Talk.
is just, yes, it
Yeah.
was just, it
Mm-hmm.
just brought it all together. And I just love that. I love moments like that.
Yeah, it felt like a flow and everything like stood and
Mm,
fit together like a puzzle that finally came
mm,
together, and then like a river between the trees that always is flowing
yes.
silently, and then out of
Mm,
nowhere you just noticed its flow. You just notice how clear it is, but
mm,
before you weren't seeing it because you were busy with some other things,
yes, yeah,
right? Maybe you were busy with the hike, you didn't notice the tree, the
yeah.
river and the trees, you know, the whole scene, right?
Mm,
Yeah, amazing. I love this conversation so much.
Me
It's
too.
filled with so many emotions, and
Mm,
everything related to Leah would be linked in the description below, so you enjoy her writings and her amazing self that she's always sharing with us. We are privileged to have you, Leah.
thank
Um,
you.
so I thank you for sharing your words, for being there on Instagram, for welcoming me when I was a newbie, and I still feel like a newbie, right? And for like for persistence, not stopping. Even if you took a break, for taking the break and letting the people that
Mm,
you're taking a break, for a lot of things, for touching people's life, right, when they needed it, and for being here, of course. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And
thank
I
you. Thank you for taking the time to. I love that you're a storyteller, and I love that you said at the start, and your questions just are so beautifully
you.
combined. It was beautiful, and so thank you. This was a journey for myself that you took me on, and I really really appreciate that.
Thank you. You inspired all the questions. I didn't prepare them. I just went with your flow, right? That's your seasons. So
Yes.
I want to thank you, and I want to thank everyone who's been listening or watching to the Lemon Narrative with Sabrine. And until I see you next time with more amazing people. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.